like you wouldn't go to the gym for 3 months and go, okay, I got a six pack now. I don't need to go to the gym anymore. And this is the mental gym. This is the gym of becoming the best version of yourself.
The Charming Man podcast is back. In today's episode, we discuss the 4 pillars you need to master to be the best version of yourself in 2024.
People talk about you are the average of the 5 people that you're around. But there's one person that we listen to every single day. And that's our own mind, our own thoughts, emotions, feelings.
For each pillar, we cover what it is, how you can build a system around it, and how you can measure your progress so that you're getting 1% better every single day.
To create the life that we want, actually, there's a consistent set of a small number of actions we need to be taking.
If you enjoy this episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment on what you think we should talk about next. Thank you for watching.
Welcome to the Charming Man podcast, season 2, episode 1. I am here joined by not Mr. Numer, but Dr. Numer. Dr. Numer, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Mr. Reynolds?
I am doing just fine. So today we are going to talk about the 4 pillars of becoming the best version of yourself as a man in 2024 and probably for years to come. But we're bringing up 2024 because that's better for titling, all right? That's better for titling. So, Dr. Numer, how should we start this discussion?
Yeah, so I think a good place to start would be to talk about how you transitioned away from the last season, which was maybe more focused on dating, to now focusing more on being the best man you can be. What made you switch your focus?
Yeah, basically, the past few years, if you've been following the YouTube channel or Instagram, Facebook, whatever platform you were on the outside to people, it looked like we were helping people around dating and relationships because it's a lot more tangible to tell someone, hey, by the end of our work together, you'll be able to meet people you're interested in. You may find yourself in a relationship. And what I found in my work over the past few years is the quality of our relationships increase based on the relationship that we have with ourselves. So although a lot of the clients were coming to me with this idea of wanting to attract their ideal woman, what they were lacking wasn't necessarily skills. It was building that internal relationship with themselves. And the way we help people around dating was by almost using the social avenue as a way to challenge their limiting beliefs and then, see what actually happens, not just live with the belief, but go out in the world, gather the data. Does this woman actually hate me? Or is this just an idea in my head? And what would happen for most people as we work together is the more they became socially free, the more they could approach and meet people, the more changes they started making in their lives. So a lot of clients that, I work with, they would come to know how to meet women and how to get a girlfriend. They would get that done. And then suddenly they would quit their job and start building their own business. Or they would decide, oh, I've lived in San Francisco. We had Lloyd. I've lived in San Francisco all my life, but I realized I'm just here based on comfort. And suddenly they would pack their stuff, go to Mexico, start living around. So we kept seeing this theme over and over again. And the reason I transitioned was I wanted to create a way in which I could give all of what I knew to people I worked with rather than 10, 15%. Because when people come in for dating, some people care about doing the meditation, and learning about psychological development and improving their life as a whole. And some people just want the strategy to get the results they want for dating. So with this new chapter we have, which is helping guys be the modern day Renaissance man who's skilled, who's in shape, who's productive, who's socially confident while feeling whole inside. This way, I found that we're able to help people a lot more holistically and also be there for longer in their own journeys. So that was the biggest inspiration for that switch.
Yeah, that makes a lot of um, sense, because something I enjoyed about the dating wasn't the dating itself as much as it's almost a modern day gladiatorial um, arena feel to it, because
This is
it's
Sparta.
yeah, and the fact that you're tapping into courage and doing something that scares you in front of other people who you feel like may judge you, it really is a very safe place to lean into courage and do things that terrify you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, you really build a lot of character by going through adversity. And that transfers over into every other aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And so to me, it really did feel like, as you said, you come in for dating, but then you really transform your whole life because you learn to improve the relationship with yourself. You learn to show up better. You understand how to optimize your time because, hey, maybe you were up too late and now you need to still be productive the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also learn to put so many of these different pieces of your life, such as fitness, into the right perspective. Um, and so that's why I really like the idea of the academy, of becoming this Renaissance man and being someone who can build his life however he wants it with intention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of this is usually people who came to me struggled with socializing because they couldn't state how they felt authentically, what they thought. So what happens when people start becoming more authentic in one area is that just spills over to other areas. And the purpose of what we're doing now and the way our messaging might shift in the YouTube channel and Instagram and these podcasts is how do we help people create this authentic life in all areas of their life? And obviously, the second reason is a very exciting update. Dr. Numer has joined the team full time a few days ago. So now you won't just have me with my Turkish belly and standing here and talking about socialization, but he'll also talk about health, productivity, fashion, and all these things. We're about to combine expertise to really help guys level up in all areas of their life. And with this switch as well, the goal with the academy, which is now the group that we run, is there's one more reason for this. I found that with high-end mentorships, right? It's quite pricey. It's worth the price compared to going the other way of being in a relationship you don't enjoy, potentially going through a divorce, flying a girl out for a vacation, and then this girl literally saying, "Hey, maybe we should be friends," the moment you welcome her at the airport. These are all stories I've heard, and coaching is a lot more affordable than that. At the same time, we both grown up in third world countries, and we know that, okay, if something is $100 in the US, it feels like 1,000 when you're buying it from somewhere like Turkey, somewhere like, you know, different places people are in the world. So what I wanted to do was to have a very affordable place, a community people could come to. And that's why, the academy is priced probably 1/10 of the amount that we could potentially price it for at some point. Right now, if you're watching this, we have a discount where people can join for $20 a week. And this includes group coaching calls. This includes private modules. This includes our whole gamification system. And before this, I used to run dating mentorships for thousands of dollars that people happily paid for. But what I realized I wanted to do, and especially with you coming in now, is to create a place where we can be there for people, not just for a few months, just for a few years or a few months, a few weeks, a place where we could be there for people for 5, 10, 20 years to come. Because my personal transformation started around 8, 9 years ago now, and it's still continuing. The first year was just about losing weight and getting in shape. Then the next few years after that was more about socializing, connecting with people. And the next few years after that was more about building a business, meditating, understanding different states of consciousness. So I think all of us evolve in our journeys of becoming our best self. And I want to be there for the right group of people all the way. Because it's not that, we would, like, you wouldn't go to the gym for 3 months and go, okay, I got a 6-pack now. I don't need to go to the gym anymore. And this is the mental gym. This is the gym of becoming the best version of yourself. And those are the type of people we want, people we can help for years to come, so that they consistently get guidance around what's the best next step for them. But they also build these lifelong connections and friendships of guys who are genuinely on the same journey.
Yeah, and that's what excites me about the academy so much, in addition to the affordability, is the fact that it really combines both mastering your inner world and having that heart-centered community of other men
Mm-hmm.
with also showing up in the external world, as well as, the more quantitative, let's look at the data, let's track the metrics, let's make sure we're consistently hitting our goals. And so when we kind of combine these almost complementary aspects of becoming your best self, they almost exponentially increase your progress in the journey, because they give you a lot of peace as well. And so that's what really excites me about the 4 pillars that we're focusing on and we're going to chat about today.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very full combination. I think it would be good, if you're watching this and you're like, hey, I want to get the knowledge. Let's get started on the 4 pillars. So the first pillar, and we're going to go through what the pillars are and how you can start working on these for yourself, so that if you're just watching this podcast, you still have a bit of a map. And maybe we'll talk a bit about how we help people specifically with that, so those examples can help things sink in for you. But the first pillar is mastering your internal world. And I think the best way to explain this really is, people talk about you are the average of the 5 people that you're around. But there's one person that we listen to every single day. And that's our own mind, our own thoughts, emotions, feelings. So the first part of you becoming the best version of yourself is knowing how to actually identify your core wounds, the things in your life that are causing you suffering, and heal those things, along with how to work with your mind and not have your mind work against you. When I was in high school, And I wanted to, like, I was one of those kids who did really well in math and physics and all the nerdy subjects. But even when I knew the answer, I wouldn't raise my hand because in my mind, I thought, oh, these people are just going to look at me and just judge me. And what if I make a mistake? So I was very terrified of just even speaking up in a classroom setting when I knew what I was about to say was useful to other people. So it was very irrational to be scared of that, but that was still some fears that came up. And I think that's where the first pillar, focusing on the internal world, is so important because you could have everything you want in your life externally, but if your internal world is turmoil, you may build something incredible and burn it completely down to the ground. You may get into a relationship with a woman who's exactly your type, who treats you the best way that you know to be treated, and then start self-sabotaging by overworking, not being communicative, not being open, not being vulnerable because of the beliefs that you hold. So as we build a better relationship with ourselves, we're able to just achieve what we want in the outside world more effortlessly because now our internal parts are not going into war, but we're just working as one unit towards one goal. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so the part you said about not your internal units not going to war is really relevant because I feel like currently the approach to self-improvement is based on this idea that we're almost undisciplined and we have to go to war with ourselves in order to make ourselves better. That's the narrative that I feel like I've seen. And the reason, and this for me especially, because I remember whenever I would be trying to accomplish a goal, it would be like my mind every day would be telling me, you can't do this, you can't do this. And that would make me work harder and go, oh, just to prove you wrong. But the thing that I found was when you try and do things like that, you're almost shutting off your creativity and you're shutting off your ability to take risks. And when you heal your inner world and you're genuinely loving yourself and trusting yourself, you're being more creative and you're taking more risks. And that creates a very authentic approach to accomplishing your goals. And it turns out when you try and accomplish your goals in a very authentic way, or I learned this when I was playing matches. And when I started to think positively, I was like, okay, I'll play in my authentic style and really trust myself to make the right decision during the right parts of the game. And that actually helped me win so much more than trying to play not to lose. So really learning to heal your inner world is not just important to make the journey more enjoyable, which obviously is very important, but it actually tangibly improves your results as well. So it's not just something of, perspective shift. And let's just all feel good and do the same thing. No, it's actually something that actually multiplies your progress and makes achieving your goals a lot more effortless. And I even found this when I was in my journey of getting healthy, when I was so obsessed with staying under a calorie number for a day, that was almost like causing me more stress and making it harder for me to stick to that. Versus once I kind of made peace with it and said, hey, once a week or once a month, if I miss my calories for the day, it's no big deal. Then quite paradoxically, every day became just so much easier and was almost effortless to eat in a deficit. And so I really cannot stress enough how important working with yourself and loving yourself while still doing the things that you need to do is.
Yeah, and I think, you touched on something very important there, where in your own journey, the moment you came to your own world with more compassion and more love and more acceptance that it is okay to make mistakes, achieving that goal became easier. Whereas a lot of the narrative right now is if you make a mistake, it's all over. Like, stay hard. Really, don't make a mistake. And if you do make a mistake, then you're supposed to beat yourself up, get angry. And that's like, yeah, now you're a real man. You're really angry about your mistakes. Great job. Let's go. Now go do some push-ups or go do some pull-ups. And I can understand how that's more productive in just like sitting there and not doing anything about your life. But the thing with anger is it's almost like a marathon runner that starts sprinting in the first hour. And the first hour, you're thinking like, wow, this person's like about to win the race. They're really going for it. And they're maybe even like going miles ahead of other people. But then what happens is halfway through the marathon, this person gets tired. Just like when you work towards a goal with anger, halfway through the way, you get burnt out. So now, even if you're working really, really hard, the input you're putting in is just not very efficient. You're putting in an energy of like frustration, frustration, frustration into your goal, and that only creates more frustration. And then eventually, maybe you still reach the goal, but then because you've been so frustrated all the time, you can't even be happy about it. You're like, well, I'm glad I'm not frustrated anymore. Okay, then let's find
Yeah,
another goal so we can push ourselves more with more frustration for a momentary dose of a dopamine hit. And I think
yeah,
the fact that that's, glorified a little bit, um, is really unfortunate. And I think it's important for people to realize being compassionate, being loving, working with yourself is one of the strongest things you can do for yourself because it takes strength to admit your weaknesses, to be okay with making mistakes or maybe not hitting a metric every now and then. That's a lot stronger than making that unacceptable and getting angry about it because with this, you're able to accept every part of yourself and not just parts of yourself that you enjoy.
yeah. That sums up pillar number one very nicely. And now, what's pillar number two, Mr. Reynolds?
Yeah, before we move there, I think let's give people who are, tuning into this some concrete ways they could start implementing this. So a couple of ways, and look, the ways I'm going to give you here is not going to be as in depth as what we would do if we were working with you for months to come, because then we tailor it to your own psyche. But a few simple ways you can do this is let's say you're going through your day-to-day life. For example, this is the first podcast me and Numer are recording. Some parts may be a little bit sluggish, some parts we may not know the right thing to say. Things are going to flow better over time. So, what I can do if I'm recording this podcast and sometimes I'm thinking, like, oh, I kind of wanted to say this, but I don't know if that landed the best way, is to switch 20 to 30% of my perspective to someone who just has unconditional love for me and just hold this perspective. Imagine this person is just next to you, just standing there and loving you all the time. Now, we're not using this love to disassociate from the moment and to think we are greater than we are, but we're just using this love almost as like an internal blanket of comfort that we can know no matter what happens, we're okay. So if you're working on this part of your life, that's the practice I would recommend is whenever you're frustrated, you're stressed, maybe you feel like you're not meeting your own expectations. switch a bit of that perspective into an unconditional love of someone who truly loves you. And just sit in that a little bit, close your eyes, be with it. And then look at what's going on again. Is it really as bad as it feels like? Or what's the reality of this situation? You may be super frustrated right now and feel like you're a complete failure. But what percentage of your life is actually failing? Is it 5%, 10%? Just getting more realistic and concrete about the situation is so helpful on realizing how much your own mind actually distorts how you experience reality. Do you have any suggestions around how people could work on this or build on this when they're addressing their internal world?
Yeah, I'd say the advice you gave me of keeping it as your phone wallpaper, um, you know, find a phrase that resonates with you and reminds you to look at it from love. So, for example,
Mhm.
what would a phrase that I would pick, for example, that I would put on my phone's wallpaper would be, um, if this was my little brother's life, how would I talk to him about it?
Mm,
Um, and whatever works for you, that can work for you.
mm,
But always keeping that and remembering, okay, I look at my phone, okay, I remember, let me do the exercise of looking at my life with a lot of love and compassion. And then, as you keep doing the classic reinforcement learning on this, you'll slowly learn to shift your default perspective from one of beating yourself up to one of really loving yourself.
mhm. Yeah, that's a very good one indeed. So now that we have some more concrete advice around this, let's move on to the second pillar. The second pillar is kind of what we talked a little bit about earlier on. But if we could explain it in just one phrase, I think it would come down to building courage and capability in the external world. And the skills that we build is kind of like a measure of that, because every skill requires some courage, like going to the gym, even even improving your fashion. We work with people, or I work with people who they get the perfect outfit, but because they don't believe they could actually handle that outfit, they just don't really take that advice. That's again how the internal world connects to the external world. So it's this idea of being that modern Renaissance man who could build the skills, and this part is very important, build the skills that he wants for his own life, his own authentic expression, not the skills that look cool and interesting. Because I think one of the things that I've seen over and over again is it's like people build a certain set of skills, but just because it gives them validation and not because
Uh,
that's the life that they want to lead. So this pillar comes down to first knowing what is the authentic expression of life that you want to live, and secondly, how can you build a holistic life around that? So what would you say are some different areas that guys can build skills in, and how would this actually play out?
yeah, before I dive into that, I just
Yeah.
want to say there's a very specific reason why this is number two on the pillar and not
Mm.
number one. And once I describe the skills themselves, then I'll jump into it because I feel like I have a few very nice anecdotes. And so, in terms of skills, obviously there's our own career skills, which can be whatever kind of careers we like, let's say coding or whatever other career one may be in.
Mhm.
That let's not touch on as much because there's a level of constraint there in terms of you need to do it because it's your primary source of income. But other skills, those involve things like skills around your physicality. We're seeing all the big names these days doing some jujitsu, some MMA. I think I even saw
Right.
Zuckerberg in Vogue's corner. But building physical strength in and physical capability in any activity of your choosing,
Mm-hmm.
that's one very good skill to start building, because when you can trust your body to kind of take action when you need it to, that actually gives you a lot of conviction.
Right. Yeah.
Another skill would be your ability to socialize, be charismatic. And I'm quite deliberately not using the word influence here because I feel like that can be that can be twisted a little bit, but really being able to be charismatic, meet people on your own terms, and being able to, be dropped in a random city and not knowing anyone and building a social circle of people you love to be with and who accept you for who you are. That's a very important skill, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
that includes, building relationships both with men and women and everyone.
Mm-hmm.
The third one is about more general health. Now, this is the reason I kept it different from just physical capability is because it's quite easy to take it to very one extreme where, hey, if you want to be able to bench 365, just spank that, just take overdose of TRT, no medical advice, please don't.
Yeah.
But it's quite easy to take that to a very dangerous extreme. So yes, physical capability is good, but feeling good, feeling sharp, is also a very important skill to build. Really, that vitality.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say a final skill that I think is quite important because it served me well is your fashion, which I consider it almost a form of indirect communication, much like your body language. So
Mm-hmm.
knowing what your fashion is communicating about you, that's also another important skill to build. Are there any you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I think really any skill that's authentic to whoever's listening. Like for me, a couple of the skills I'm prioritizing now is learning bachata or becoming better at it. After I randomly walked into a dance social in Poland and I realized I thought I knew how to dance, but I really had no idea. That was
Yeah,
that was absolutely amazing. And I think another skill that's going to be a priority for me is going to be at least playing one musical instrument in the next few years, probably the ukulele. But again, the key with these skills is once you have the foundations covered, like Numer, you were saying, with the health, vitality, fashion, social charisma, productivity, designing the life that you want, then it's on you to kind of pick what interests you. But I think where a lot of people make mistakes is they go, oh, photography sounds like a very cool hobby. I have zero interest in taking pictures, but it could be good for networking and meeting people. So then they try to learn photography. And what happens is because their heart's not in it, they're just not that motivated. And then they might think they have a lack of motivation problem, whereas realistically, they just picked something wrong to begin with. So I think a lot of this idea of building courage and capability comes down to becoming the man who's okay with like how life unfolds and knowing that you can respond to it. Knowing that if you, like you said, if you were dropped off in a random country, you wouldn't just die on your third day, but you would actually figure out where the grocery store is, sign up for a gym, go meet some people, and how to make it work. Because I think, you know, what men want more than skills is the feeling of being capable. And if you
yeah,
have the feeling of being capable, then you can build any skill. So what we do in the academy is not just giving you the skills, but teaching you the skills to learn the skills. So not just like
Yeah.
learn this or do this or here's the strategy, but it's like how do you break down a certain area and then develop that area with your own authentic expression. I think the the way to look at building all these skills is not just, oh, this is what you do and then you reach this end goal, but it's almost like a painting. Like you have this blank canvas. How would you want this skill to look like for you? It will be slightly different for me, slightly different for you, and slightly different for the people watching and tuning in. And that's where doing this holistically becomes super powerful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the reason this is number two, what I find is that what the skill looks like for you is very dependent on how much you've healed your inner world. So,
Right.
for example, I was I in my later teens, I was a chubby kid, and
Mhm.
then I shredded down the weight. But in my mind, I was still the chubby kid. And
Uh,
so that made me feel like I was unworthy of love. But then when I started like lifting and doing some more structured cuts and online programs, it made me, even though I was getting results, it made me think, okay, I'm only worthy of love if I'm on a single digit body fat.
mm,
And it was almost unhealthy to the extent that like as a 5'7" guy who normally, let's say, sits at 165 or 160, that's pounds, I don't know, kilograms for our
mm,
metric system users. I was down to like 135, and I just looked like a human chicken wing.
yeah.
Um, and, I had trouble sleeping just because I'd be so hungry and I'd still be like, oh, I can only eat 1,800 calories.
Yeah.
Um, and the more I healed my inner world, the more I realized, okay, I'm worthy of love, even if I'm like at a heavier weight, and
Mm,
I don't have to like obsessively kill myself to look like a certain way just to meet people. And
yeah.
now it's almost like, you know, I I had too many tacos and now I'm sitting at a heavier weight. And it's almost like I'm going through the experience again, but learning to almost process it and realize, okay, even though I'm at a higher weight, life has been really good. Like meeting people, dating has been really, really fun. And
Mm,
so it's almost like I'm reprocessing the experience of being that fat kid and then learning to adjust my perspective to, okay, it's time for me to lean down, but let me lean down in a way that adds to my health, adds to my vitality, instead of like killing my sleep, um, killing my thyroid function, and to kind of make it more tangible. This was the first time I was like, okay, because a couple months back I was like, okay, I'm getting fat. Why don't I just start cutting now?
mhm,
And objectively, it was just a terrible time for me to cut. It would have only stressed me out more. And
mm,
for the first time, I was like, you know what? I don't need to obsessively cut weight. I'm fine at the weight that I am, and I can be loved and have the love that I want at the weight that I am. And
mm,
that doesn't mean I'm complacent. It just means that I know I can love myself at any given weight, and that creates a lot more of a peaceful process
mm.
to showing up in the gym and building my physical fitness skills.
Yeah, exactly. That perspective of, again, coming back to that self-love just makes the whole journey easier because then also, let's say you, at least what used to happen to me when I really forced myself, is then if I went out of track, like let's say one day I ate something unhealthy to start with, then I would just go all the way. Like that day was
Yeah.
over. Whereas from the perspective of self-love, if you make a mistake, maybe you go a little bit like this, but then instead of going like, well, I already messed up, let me just boom, and
Yeah.
then you take like a sharp right turn, you go, okay, that's fine, let's go back and track. And look at all this time you saved here just because you actually took the time to build this relationship. And this is where, the internal world and the external world combines, and the whole process is so much more efficient. Like, we're not talking about working on your internal world because we think you should go to a beach on Mexico and have some positive thoughts, and that feels really good. It will feel good, but that's still not real change. We're talking about how to build your internal world and combine it with these skills because it's the most efficient and effective way to lead your life.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Should we move on to the third pillar? Your
Yeah.
favorite, your child. Um,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Namer, introduce the third pillar.
So pillar number three is something I'm quite excited about, is this idea of gamification. And part of it, I drew inspiration from these little drills that we would do to improve our conditioning. And, the general principle is, it's a being able to run faster for longer is a physiological adaptation. So you just need to push yourself above your current threshold, and then your body adapts and lets you do it, right?
Mm.
And there's many ways to do this. You could literally do it in the most boring way, or you could play it with your friends and make a game out of it. And
Mm.
what I realized was when you're playing it with your friends and you're making a game out of it, it is so much easier to push yourself past the threshold versus, if you're just doing it by yourself. So
Mhm.
really, the idea of gamification came from, okay, there are a number of tasks that we need to do that in the moment are not as fun as just going to the beach in Mexico or eating a million tacos. Um, so how can we, in this age of technology and data, how can we leverage that to make the process of creating lasting change as fun as possible?
Mhm. Yeah.
And, seeing a lot of interesting research in psychology, for example, habit formation cycles, seeing research on variable rewards, we were like, well, these are already being deployed in so many different applications in our day-to-day life to
Mhm.
create almost unhealthy addiction cycles. What
Right.
if we use the same principles to create healthy habits that help people become the best version of themselves?
Yeah, exactly. And with this third pillar right now, the whole AI technology is being used in quite a few ways that causes suffering for people. And, it's a very powerful technology that you know a lot more about than I would. But I think there are ways in which we could really use that to help people improve their own lives. And with the gamification and combining it with just the scale and power of technology, what would be like a very high-end one-on-one coaching, we could use the technology and really map out people's path to go, oh, this is what this person would most likely need at this time. So the way I look at this component is very much about like what are the metrics to track that are important for you for your progress, and then how could you make tracking those metrics fun. So even if you're not working with us, you could use the same principles to build something for yourself, but then what we're aiming to do over time and what we're doing right now is like, how do we make just that part so valuable that that becomes a no-brainer, and then everything else is just like, whoa, I can't believe I'm also getting all this, because one of one of the things in the internet age now is we don't like information. We have all the information in the world. You're listening to this podcast, you're getting some good ideas. You're probably listening to some other podcast, watching YouTube videos. But it's like, how do we change that information to implementation? And part of that will come as you do the healing work. Maybe you have a core wound around initiation, so you just never start stuff. And we heal that with the internal work. But then the other part of it is through the data and the tracking and making it fun. You don't feel, no one here really struggles to be like, wow, my favorite TV show, Ted Lasso. I really struggle to open my laptop and watch Ted Lasso. So clearly, we're all motivated to do something. So, how do we make the thing that we want to do also the thing that would be good for our growth? And that's where I think there's so much power in this.
Yeah, exactly. For example, with the daily reports and tracking, it's so cumbersome to have to, obviously this is me being spoiled in the technological age, but even copy pasting the same format is kind of just like, oh my God, do I have to do this? Versus using elements from the Fogg behavioral model to decrease the amount of resistance it takes by making it a Google form, making it pre-filled, and just, having a minimum number of fields that need to be updated, as well as giving some positive reinforcement every time you submit it. That makes your metric tracking so much more fun and so much easier. And the other thing I like about this data-driven approach is that, and you can speak more to this than me, is that a lot of elements of coaching different people actually have certain elements of repetition to them. And the technology allows us to take the repetitive elements around, okay, if these metrics look like this, then do this. It allows us to package that and deliver that at scale and pass on a lot of those savings to you, the listener, because now it's not just us needing to knock door to door and then having to be bottlenecked by our time and then be charged accordingly. It's actually, you can just give it, you can kind of package our expertise into a technological solution and then deliver it at scale. And that really improves the affordability of the system as well.
Yeah. So for someone watching or listening in, could you talk a little bit about the daily report system? Obviously, you and I know how it works, but if someone, this is the first podcast they've ever seen, they like the idea so far, how does that look like for what we're implementing at a high level? And then how could they build something similar for their own life in the most basic way?
Yeah, so really the inspiration came from this quote that has a bit of a controversial history, but it says, what gets measured gets managed.
Right. Winston Churchill.
Yeah, with Einstein. And, my thinking was, okay, to create the life that we want, actually, there's a consistent set of a small number of actions we need to be taking. Now, obviously, what ends up happening is you start off strong on Monday. You're like, I'm going to meditate every day. And then Saturday rolls around. And it's like, wait, how many days did I meditate? Or how many days did I work out?
Right.
And so the idea was, and also what I was finding was there's so many different apps. And so can we put it all in one place? So really the idea was, what's the minimum set of actions you need to do on a daily basis to improve your life? And now, can we package it in one place in a fun way, such that it always gets recorded and then it automatically gets analyzed and delivered in terms of actionable insight? So, in our academy, what we look at are things like, how was your sleep? Did you work out? How authentically did you live life today? what was the boldest move, what lesson you learned. So it really combines both the qualitative and the quantitative aspects of tracking, and it makes you be very intentional every day. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't track things just for the sake of tracking things. I track things so that I can be intentional. For example, with calories, there's no point in tracking calories, or in my opinion, no point in tracking calories just to track calories. You want to track calories so that you know, okay, am I getting all the macros in the correct ratio, and I'm getting the relevant micronutrients. So the
Mm-hmm.
same idea applies here. Can I use this tracking to be very intentional about my day? And then when I look at my weekly summary, I can then be intentional about how I design my next week. And
Mm-hmm.
slowly you can take this into a long-term view and say, okay, can I be intentional about how I design my months, my years? And by consistently being intentional and taking the right actions every day, you can start to create the life that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Thing is, this gets anyone who knows about living in the spreadsheets knows that it just becomes a drag once like you hit so many columns that you're on like X, Y, or X, Z. And it's just like, wow, my spreadsheet is it's long. And so the idea was, okay, well, we have so many new database technologies, so many APIs coming out. Can we make this whole process very, very simple and very actionable and very fun?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we set up the daily report system that you get a link sent to you, you can fill it out, and then it's gamified. So you get rewards, bonuses based on how you fill it out, and then you get a weekly analysis as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found is that that really makes people want to take part, as well as it creates kind of the social rapport of it, because now everyone is seeing what each other is doing and really getting motivated by uh, each other's actions. And now people can replicate it on a small scale themselves, actually, where something I used to do was me and maybe one or two other guys would have our own spreadsheet, and we would meet bi-weekly and list our goals. And then we would all kind of list our goals one below the other, and then see, oh, is this done? Is this done? Is this done? And that way there was almost that peer-to-peer accountability,
Mm-hmm.
as well as that fun of, hey, every 2 weeks the boys get together, they banter, and then they look at their goals, and then they go, okay, we did this, okay, why didn't this get done? And then everyone gives each other suggestions. So that would be a good starting place, in my opinion, to kind of have a fun basic system to start tracking your progress.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you cover that extremely well. And one of our intentions here is to simplify that so much over time that because as people go through the journey, then we can also use what we see in their journey to make the process better. So you may, someone else may make a random spreadsheet, but they have to decide what to track. They have to decide how often to measure the metrics that they track. They have to have the discernment to know like what's important and what's not, and what's, you love bringing this up in certain conversations, but what's like causation versus correlation. And
Yeah.
with the system that we're building, we can take care of all those things for you and just give you the simplest way to keep moving towards your goals. And that's where, I'm super excited about this and the podcast itself and all this journey that we're in now. It's like we have the internal world. It's about building a loving relationship with yourself. We have the external skills, and then we have the way of just making this really fun, where we're not there just yet, but our goal within the next year or two is to make it almost feel like playing a video game, but then the rewards are actually in real life. Like I played years of League of Legends, spent way too many hours on that game. And the crazy part was I kept playing even after even when I stopped liking the game. I still played for another like 6 months because I'd just gotten so used to being in that ecosystem and the rewards and being in that community. So we're trying to create something similar where those same principles, instead of keeping you stuck in avoidance cycle that take away from your life, how can we use those to put you into health cycles to help you build a life that you want? So there's one final pillar to all of this, which we mention every now and then, but this pillar is community, and not just any community, because we've seen in our own lives being around the wrong people can really pull you down, but being around the right group of people can really pull you up. So our intention with our community is to bring in guys who have good hearts, guys with high integrity, guys willing to do the work, guys who are not looking for a quick solution, a 6-minute abs workout, or one sentence to tell to a stranger so you look extremely charismatic. But really,
Increase
guys,
your testosterone by 1,000% in 30 seconds with this one pill.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm still looking for that pill. It's coming in 2 weeks.
Mystical.
Yeah, mystical. Doctors hate this, man. Um, what our intention is here is to bring up, a really good group of guys and just mentor them over time. And this is also why we've simplified the business model, because the truth is, once we reach a certain amount of people, we don't need to keep enrolling people anymore. Like, we're good. So then we can really focus on improving this community and making this like our life's mission, serve these people in the best way. And I think one of the best aspects of my journey of stepping into my social fears and meeting people and dating and going into relationships and traveling was the guys that I met along the way. Like, we would have never met if this journey didn't happen. And my best
Yeah.
friends these days, they've all been through these types of communities of just working on ourselves and pushing ourselves. And I think, this is where lifelong friendships are built. If you have big goals and if you care about a peaceful relationship with yourself, and if you genuinely want to live an incredible life, you're going to need a community to support you. This is not a lone wolf operation. One of my,
The Sigma.
yeah, we're not here for the Sigma male act. One of my first mentors said this thing, which I still love to this day. He said, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together, go in a community. And I think that holds so much power.
Yeah. And, even from my life, having had experiences with supportive communities and not so supportive communities, and having to like sometimes just grit my teeth and be like, okay, even though they're giving me a lot of grief right now.
Yeah, meditate as you're going into the club, right?
Yeah, exactly. 6 hour, 6 hour. Uh, it makes so much more difference to have guys who you know are going to support you. So, for example, if you're out and about and you see a pretty girl, and as it happens to all of us, you go off and maybe she's just not very impressed and doesn't even give you the time of day. If you have a group of supportive friends who are willing to have you come back and then support you and love you and laugh together about the situation, that makes it so much more fun than having a group of friends who are going to like make fun of you for the way things went. So from so many even I think like with going to the gym, with eating better, with not drinking alcohol. There's so many ways in which having a supportive community where people say, hey, if you don't want to drink alcohol, okay, it's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's so amazing compared to guys who will be like, oh, you don't drink alcohol. Oh, I thought we were friends, like all of those kinds of reactions. And so, really, having that community is a very valuable aspect, and it makes pillars one, two, and three so much more effective when you have pillar number four in place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Any final thoughts about these four pillars?
Um, I like to think of them as these force multiplying aspects. Like, it's easy to, if you can focus purely on one pillar, like pillar number one, but
Mm-hmm.
then the level to which you'd have to accomplish it would need to be like 100x more proficient, versus you can kind of focus on all four of these pillars, and then you don't need to go as deep in any one of them. But because they all have this synergy, you can kind of become a better version almost more efficiently by doing all four and understanding the interplay between all four of the pillars versus kind of hyper focusing on one.
Yeah, I agree. It's not like, oh, if I focus on one pillar, I get 25%. It's more like you get maybe 10%. And then as you combine all the different pillars, then that's where you get to 100%. And that's why, every pillar that we teach is there for a reason. And it's been placed very strategically and crafted very strategically. So, if you're listening to this podcast and you're curious about how it would be like to be a part of the Charming Man Academy and have us guide you through these four pillars, again, the purpose of our group is to help guys become the best version of themselves while building the relationship that matters the most and feeling whole inside. And we want to make it fun and put you around a loving, warm community. Then, go on the link in description, message me on Instagram, and we can send you the details. And then if you're not ready to do that just yet, that's completely fine. We are going to be putting out a lot more podcast episodes like this, talking about every single area of life, health, career, lifestyle design, internal work, meditation, spirituality, socializing, relationships, everything you want. Send us questions. We'll come hop on here with just the tip of our microphones and give you a very cool conversation that hopefully you enjoy. Any final thoughts, Dr. Numer?
No, that's all for me.
All right. Well, if you enjoy this, make sure to subscribe or follow and send this to a friend so we can grow this podcast and spread this knowledge. This is Ege.
This is Numer, still with no last name.
That's right. And this is the Charming Man podcast. Thanks for watching.